My name is George Burgess. My branch of service was the Fifth Army Military Police. I served from 1992 to 1945. I was in college at the time, and I was going to get into the V-12 program, and then my sister was on the draft board, and Uncle Sam sent me a card saying, "We want you now," so I had to be drafted into this service. Well, after I got drafted, I went to the Armory in Albany, and from Albany I was shipped to Camp Upton in New Jersey, and from there I was shipped to Camp Swift, Texas for my 6 months of basic training. I was a physical education major, and I wanted to get into the special services, but they were filled and I couldn't get in, so I used to drive a truck for my dad, and so I went into the motor pool, and I drove Jeeps and big 6x6s and all of the military equipment. I left Camp Shanks on the Hudson River, right from Texas, and then we were shipped right overseas, and we landed in Oran, Africa, and from there we spent several months, and then when Rommel was on the run from there, then we started our tour through Sicily and Italy. Well, our job was to open up all the ports, keep the vehicles transporting goods to the front line. We were pretty much a military police with the infantry, and our duty was to take care of all that business of the ports and transportation of materials and goods to the Army. The first one that kind of rattled our bones was the bombing of Naples. The sky was lit up with the tracer bullets, it looked like the 4th of July. But from there we went to up at Anzio Beachhead, and we got bogged down there, and of course we all scrambled for undercover, hid in the woods and under the vehicles and stuff. They had a big gun called Bertha, Blazing Bertha, and it took 32 men to man that gun. And it was up on the mountains over Anzio, and eventually when we took Anzio, that gun today is in the Smithsonian Institute. Well, when I was in the motor pool, I was stationed in Italy, and then in Naples, Italy, and then I was driving the officers around in a Jeep. But then they used to put me on the big 6x6 trucks and haul the soldiers for R&R in Rome. And that was quite interesting. And at that time, I got to see the Pope. I had a meeting with him. He did our company alone, and then also also, at the same time, Cardinal Spellman of New York said a mass. He stood at the door and he met every one of us individually. He asked who our priest was, and I told him my priest was Father Hatch from Umstedville. And he said, "Oh, I know him very well." And so, you know, we had a nice visitation. But with the Pope, I took the rosaries and Bibles and things for the Pope to bless them. Yeah, I had several meetings with the Pope. I was in courtship with my wife for 8 years, but we didn't get married until after the service. She would write to me every day, and I would answer back as often as I could. We were able to send pictures and so on. No, I had on my Jeep, her name was Sylvia, and on the front under the windshield it was printed Sylvia, big at the back. Well, I remember we were in Naples, the railroad building. That's where we were bunking up, because there were no windows, just open space, and we had for heat, we had a big drum with a gas tank happened top to it for heat. And I know this one night we got caught. The Germans would try to bomb the port of Naples every night, and they missed. They couldn't hit the port, but they bombed the city, and we got caught down under the air raid. We ran, right next to us was a railroad trestle, and we went under that. It was 35 feet underground. And we stayed down there until the bombing was over. They come about 5 minutes at 7 o'clock every night. The closest I came to an R&R was my friend Pete Malesko from Long Island. We're scheduled to go to Switzerland. And so we were getting all ready for a week's visit, and the first sergeant and his buddy found out we were going to be shipped out, so they took our place, and we never did get to go. All the way through Italy. We went from Naples up through Anzio, Cassino, Mount Cassino, which was bombed. Nothing was left on that. And then to Latoria in the outskirts of Rome. And we were stationed in Rome for several months. And then we went on to Leghorn, which they called Livornia. And that's where the Germans were on the run. All in the book I have, it shows all of the bombed half-tracks and their airplanes and all their equipment being destroyed. And we were so close to Cassino. And then that's where Mussolini and his mistress were hung up by their heels and bayoneted. They never got to get that there, but we read about it, and they had pictures in the paper. Our paper was called Stars and Stripes. 28 months. Yeah, when I got out of the service on December, I think it was 13th of December. That's when I was discharged, and I came home. And then on December 25th, That's when my wife and I got married.
Right.
My good friend was Pete Malesko from Long Island. And the interesting thing about him was when we were going overseas on Liberty ships, he couldn't swim. He was petrified. And so when we got into Italy after a while and we were stationed in Rome, I said, Pete, I'm going to take you to the beach and teach you how to swim. Of course, I taught swimming in my days of teaching anyway. And so we went there. We had a beach called Coney Island. And on the left side were officers and Red Cross workers and so on. And then on our side, enlisted men, and they served coffee and donuts, beer, Coke, everything there. We never had any Coke or beer we had Coke, but never had any beer for about 22 months. Then it was piled up 7 miles long because they had to take care of all of Italy. So, and we used to get these big 4-foot high cakes of ice, about 4 inches square, put them in an iron barrel, and then we'd put our Coke and beer in there. And the officers, they're very friendly with us. We got along well. They'd come down, they want some beer, so they'd bring their liquor down. And if we wanted any liquor, they'd give us liquor, but we'd give them beer. And then also, when the cook in the kitchen, we used to get flour, and we went and took it to a restaurant across the street, and he would make homemade bread and spaghetti and meatballs. And boy, that was good. I remember this one time, my buddy and I were going to a restaurant, and we were having, we thought, boy, some steak. And we ordered a steak, and it was tougher than shoe liver. You couldn't eat it. We found out it was horse meat. They had, if you went around the streets, you would find, the cat wouldn't eat that, couldn't chew it. It was so tough. But on the streets, some open markets, you know, they had everything. They had dogs and cats and all kinds of animals hanging there in the air. It was brutal. Also, another interesting point was, you asked about what friends I met over in Italy. I got off duty one night, and this fellow came in. It was 8 o'clock in the morning, and we had these folding cots to sleep on. And all of a sudden, the cot rolled over, and I fell on the floor. He said, "You're going to sleep your life away?" But no, it was Walt McCormick, a high school friend of mine, played ball together. And he was stationed 4 miles from me. He was an airplane mechanic. He had his own pilot, and he had to take care of his plane, keep everything going, and so on. And so I used to go out there, and every day a farmer would bring him a quart of fresh milk. So I had some fresh milk with him, and that was good. Then at another time, Lynn Galusha who lived right up in Louis Lake area. And he was there, and he came in, visited with me. We had a nice visit. And my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, was in Bari, Italy. It wasn't very far, but we didn't know that. Had I known that, we could have gotten together. We couldn't do it. So, and I met Frank Mitchell, a local boy that I was in school with at the Port of Naples. That was good. And this one morning I was down, we were on the dock, and they had, the Red Cross had coffee and donuts, and we said, let's go get a cup of coffee and have some donuts. And I walked over, and lo and behold, here's my classmate from college serving coffee and donuts. But then another time, my friend and I, we had passes for Naples. We lived there during our stay, and we had passes, and we could go anywhere in the city we wanted. And those passes were given to us by our commanding officer. And so we went, and we were going to go. We just had a cup of coffee and a donut there. We wanted to go to the theater to see a movie. Well, we got in there, and because the war was ending, here's majors and colonels on line, stopping every soldier, looking for passes and stuff. And they says, your pass is not good. Well, it was. So they took us to what they call the Questura, which is a Italian jail. But we had it, and we owned it. Our outfit took care of it. So we were in there all day. They took our belts and our wallets and everything off from us. And they said, well, I said, we call our company commander and our motor sergeant. And he said, no, they've moved. And I said, they didn't move, we're stationed here. Yeah, you moved. So we got right up to the half hour before the 24 hours were up. We would have been listed AWOL. So anyway, our motor sergeant and our company commander, Lieutenant or Captain O'Connell, who was a wonderful, wonderful man. He wanted me to go back in the service, and he said, I'll start out and I'll make you an officer. He wanted to get guys that he had in the company with him, but I said, no, I'm married and I don't want to go back. But anyway, they got us out. And we issued a warning to, it was another company only of MPs, and we issued them a warning, if we catch you around the port or anywhere around our territory, you're going to come in here and go to jail. But we never had to, they believed us and they didn't bother. What they said was to enjoy life, and the friends you make are never endless, because after the war, when I was in contact with all my buddies, we had meetings, we used to go for company reunions in Long Island, and it was just great keeping in touch with them, and especially that two of my buddies, both from Indian Lake, were also with us in Company A overseas, and it was just great. And all of the keeping in touch with all the fellows, and also the officers, Captain Block from Michigan, and Lieutenant Miller from Missouri, and Lieutenant Albright, who came home before we did, and he's stopping in New York City, and he said, well, I'm going up and I'll stop at your home. So he did. He came up and stopped at my mother's home, and of course Rita was home, my sister, so they went dancing and had a great time. But what happened to him was his wife left him, so he was alone. And the same thing happened to my great buddy too, Pete Malesko. His wife left him.